All right, here we go. Recently, President Trump has been tweeting a lot about the need to reopen the economy, the U.S. economy. But why does a U.S. president need to do that? The answer, unfortunately, is that over the decades, the U.S. president has declining amounts of power because of big government, because of the bureaucracy, because states have taken enormous amounts of control over the economy. What is occurring now with the coronavirus outbreak at the federal, state, and local level in the U.S., and I'm sure this is the case in many other countries, is a libertarian's worst nightmare. Not only do we have enormous amounts of government and central bank intervention with tens of trillions already in liquidity injections. Officially, there are over 20 trillion of liquidity injections in just the last 2.5 to 3 months. Just saw a new report out compiling the amount of government and central bank liquidity injections with stimulus or bailouts, whatever the hell they want to call them. It doesn't matter. It's government intervention and bailouts and government picking winners and losers. But this specific show, more than going through the stock market, which is ridiculous and going up now on any trial data for phase 1 drugs or anything else that seems remotely positive, is all the craziness that these politicians, this is going to be a liberty show with some of the just absolute craziness that is going on. So President Trump's supporters are saying that Democrats now, whether that's the LA mayor, the New York City mayor, governors in different states, are intentionally delaying the restart of the economy. Some of these Trump supporters are saying the longer it takes to restart the economy, and I don't think the restart is going to go too smoothly. But so far, we don't have a lot of people infected, but I think the main damage is not going to be from people infected and people dying. I think the main damage is economic damage and all the freedom and liberty that has been taken away, all the businesses that may not come back. So President Trump's supporters are alleging that the Democrat politicians at all different levels of U.S. government, federal, state, local level, are trying to delay this as long as possible until the November 2020 election, as close as possible to that, to help the Democrat candidate. But the amount of arrests, the amount of business owners that just want to adapt to market conditions, whether that's a restaurant owner that wants to have a certain amount of customers and can make the necessary changes to get people back in their restaurant without government politicians and bureaucrats forcing them to have a certain amount of occupancy level, is unbelievable. The economics of restaurants do not work at 20% occupancy rate unless the restaurant has an enormous delivery and takeout business. Having a 20% amount of people in the restaurant is not going to work for the economics of the restaurant unless the politicians start changing the rules again about rent control, and then that's just going to make things worse. We might have that. We might have even more rules changes with trying to freeze rent or trying to mandatory force rent lower. It would not surprise me at this point. But the amount of stupidity that I've seen out of bureaucrats and politicians is insane. We have had salon owners arrested for trying to feed their kids. We've had a gym owner arrested where politicians are claiming that initially the claim was that they were trying to flatten the curve and that they wanted everyone to stay healthy. But if you're staying indoors, getting fat, not getting vitamin D, how are you staying healthy if you can't go to the gym? So just lots of lies from government, lots of unintended consequences by some of these politicians. Some of them are doing it intentionally, and some of them are doing it unintentionally. We have the Illinois governor, Pritzker, threatening business owners with a year in prison if they try to reopen. My God, this is just ridiculous. Last week, Illinois Democrat governor J.B. Pritzker warned the people of Illinois, the state in lockdown and businesses shut down until the end of May. He later told CNN the citizens of Illinois could be ordered to socially distance and wear masks indefinitely. Pritzker wants to jail business owners. The small business owners are trying to save their livelihoods could face up to a year in prison under J.B. Pritzker's new emergency rules unless a key committee fights back. Members of a key legislative committee are scheduled to meet May 20th to discuss a newly filed emergency rule that criminalizes businesses who defy the governor and his stay-at-home order. Pritzker amended Illinois Department of Public Health rules so business owners can be charged with a Class A misdemeanor for violating his closure order. The rule immediately took effect Friday, and now business owners can face a maximum penalty fine of $2,500 and 1 year in prison. Since this new rule was filed as an emergency rule, it would be effective for 150 days. This is going to force businesses to shut down. People were already leaving the state of Illinois because of the property taxes that have been going on. I've been covering this, the pension fund shortfalls, for the last couple of years. I covered this on shows in 2019. There were record amounts of people leaving the Chicago area, getting out of Illinois, and going to other states, either moving to Florida or going states that are closer to Illinois, like Indiana. So this is the unintended consequences. Look at the stupidity of the governor of California and how many affluent people in California, well, some of them will leave. We have Adam Carolla tweeting about, giving us updates on Twitter about all the craziness that the governor of California is doing. He still hasn't left yet. I'm a little surprised. But we have people like Joe Rogan, who just got a big payday, talking about leaving. Or I think he might have already left. But this is going to create unintended consequences for these politicians because they think that a lot of people will just stay and take it. Thank you, sir. May I please have another? They will just pay more taxes and deal with more regulation. People are going to leave. People have been leaving. I've been covering this for over a year. People have been leaving Illinois, New York, New Jersey, California. Business owners have been leaving California. California has been getting less middle-class people, less small business owners. We have the LA mayor, Garcetti, telling people to snitch on handshakes or people at the beach. Now I think they're somewhat reopening now, but he was doing this for over a month. They have drones flying over looking for people that are in mass gatherings so they can give them tickets or arrest them. Just unbelievable. So not only do you have the economic damage and the the currency printing and credit printing, but you also have people losing their freedoms. You have governments forcing businesses to shut down. People can't pay their bills. There was even an op-ed, I think, in a New York City paper, might have been the New York Daily News in the last day or two, begging the governor of New York to reopen the city. That so many people are poor now because they don't have work. But maybe they think MMT is gonna fix this. It's not really going to fix this. They think this is going to fix this, though. You have to really see this Mark Cuban plan. This brings me into Mark Cuban's plan, Mr. Fake Libertarian here, because for years Mark Cuban has been promoting himself that he's a limited government libertarian. Although I never really heard him quote any Austrian school economics, but he was adamant that he was in favor of small government. The stuff that Mark Cuban has been speaking about the last couple days, there was a Market Watch article about this recently. Mark Cuban says families. I put some of the tweets there on your collage. I have a dystopian collage there. I have a dystopian collage of a lot of bad things that have been happening to Americans, not just the amount of currency and credit being created, but all the other things in the last 6 to 8 weeks. So Mark Cuban says families should get $1,000 in stimulus checks every 2 weeks with one big catch. Billionaire Mark Cuban, it's time for the government to push trickle-up economics to save small businesses because the Paycheck Protection Program isn't cutting it. Quote, the only thing that will save businesses is consumer demand, he wrote in a series of tweets Sunday. This is a false Keynesian belief. Keynes believed that consumer demand is what drove the economy, not savings and capital formation. If you produce more than you consume, you save the difference. You can consume from savings. You can consume from capital formation. But the Keynesians believe, if you just continue to stimulate aggregate demand, if you force people not to save, if you put in policies like negative interest rate policies, or you move the interest rates down to zero, then that will force people to spend. And that's when you get Keynesians like Ben Bernanke and Janet Yellen wondering why people won't spend when they manipulated interest rates down. Why consumer spending and velocity of money and banks lending in the economy was not doing what they thought, because they had pulled all these levers and they thought that they would get the desired outcome when they reduced interest rates. They thought they would get more people to spend. They thought that they would get more banks to lend. into the economy, and that's not what happened. So Keynes also was not in favor of saving. If you go and read the general theory, there's Austrian school economics books that go through this, like Murray Rothbard that goes through the biography of Keynes, or Henry Hazlitt's he goes through the failure of the new economics. He goes line by line through Keynes's general theory. And Keynes believed in the paradox of thrift. So Keynes believed that savings was bad for the economy, that consumer spending is what drove economic growth. So savings was not good according to Keynes. He did believe, though, that central planners should be the ones making investments, like a group of smart, well-educated, like himself, central planners should be making the key decisions in the economy on what to invest in, like infrastructure or other stupid, or $2,000 a month per person MMT checks, some stuff like that. Quote, no amount of loans to businesses will save them or jobs if their customers aren't buying. Well, maybe we need a clearing out effect. Maybe we need prices to fall, but the Keynesians don't want prices to fall. The Keynesians will not allow deflation. Basically all the policies now from Western central bankers, from central bankers in Japan, are all to fight deflation. They all have an inflationary bias. They will not allow the amount of currency and credit to fall, and then the prices to fall, especially asset prices. To do that, he explained, we have to have a transitional jobs program that trains and hires millions of people. Oh, here we go. It's not bad enough that he wants to spend the money for a federal tracking, tracing, testing program to go get those people that are infected, that Apple and Google have been working hard on for the last 6 weeks to put contact tracing on 3 billion people, according to this Bloomberg article from Mark Gurman that I put there in the Dystopian collage. So Mark Cuban, claims to be a libertarian. He's really a fake libertarian. Mark Cuban wants a massive contact tracing program. Guess who else is recommending a massive contact tracing program? Johns Hopkins University. They want 100,000 agents hired, trained and hired, here in the United States, and paid handsomely. 17,000 alone, I think, were the estimates I saw last, just in New York City, for contact tracing. To go and hunt those people down that might have the coronavirus. And then how are their families going to pay their bills if it's the head of household or they don't have savings? Because in China, there were stories of one or both parents getting quarantined or basically thrown in with a bunch of really sick infected people, and then the kids died. Or parents giving up the kids to orphanages because they couldn't afford to feed their kids anymore. There was a bunch of those stories early on in December and January. But Mr. Mark Cuban, billionaire Mark Cuban, probably might run for president. He'd be a better candidate than Joe Biden, that's for sure. He is in favor of a federal tracking, tracing, testing program, spending lots of money to hire more people for that. That would be a stimulative part of the economy. Quote, we need to dent unemployment with stable jobs, Cuban said. He added that while that plan is being implemented, an interim spending stimulus program should be put in place in which 128 million households each get a $1,000 check every 2 weeks for the next 2 months, along with the rule that it must be spent within 10 days. Okay, that's definitely not libertarian. That's 100% not Austrian School of Economics. That's just friggin' crazy. That's almost as bad as what the Democrats want from Congress. $2,000 per person per month checks, which would add almost $8 trillion projected to the federal budget deficits in only 12 months, if that $2,000 per person per month checks actually happen. So I'll read that again. He added that while that plan is being implemented, so he wants to hire all of these contact tracing agents, these health agents, to go around anyone who's suspicious, anyone who has a slightly high temperature, anyone who's coughing. Maybe they have asthma, though. Doesn't matter. Put in place in which 128 million households get a $1,000 check every 2 weeks for the next 2 months. But they have to spend it within 10 days, or the currency evaporates. Quote, He says it would cost about $500 billion. He's probably on the low end, but it will allow for demand for non-essential products and services to increase, hopefully keeping most businesses alive, as we learn what the impact of reopening is on the spread and whether or not employment grows organically, he wrote. So all the tweets are here if you want to see that. This is just the latest in a series of ideas Cuban has been suggesting in recent weeks as the government continues to navigate the global pandemic. Quote, we have to get to the point where the White House standard becomes a national standard. I think in order for consumers to feel safe going out, in order for employers to feel completely safe bringing people back to work, he said, measures to be taken before reopening the economy. How about individuals take personal responsibility for their actions? Although I've seen anecdotally around here where I live, I've seen so many adults walking around, mass gatherings, no masks, no gloves, no nothing. They're acting like they don't care. Well, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens in a couple weeks, couple months. How many more people get sick? The businesses can adapt to the situations, though. These government bureaucrats want power. This is a big power grab. This is big government on steroids. You have all these little tin pot dictators at all these different levels of government, all going for big power grabs. Whether that's the governor of Michigan doing the crazy stuff there with, people in their second homes. They weren't allowed to visit friends. They couldn't buy seeds at the store. I don't know if she changed all those laws, but the fact that she even put those laws in place for the first time is just ridiculous. And then the other thing there on the screen, some of these governors forced people who were infected into nursing homes. There is no excuse for that. No excuse for that. Sounds like they just want less people on the Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security payrolls, rolls. That's what it sounds like. Sounds like they're calling the herd. Welcome to dystopia. It's not just the federal level. It's all these tin pot dictators at all these different levels. Drunk on power. Everyone thinks that if they make their mark, they can move up in the political ladder. But the exact opposite is going to happen. Felix the cat here says things are going to get worse before they get better. I suspect so, although the oil price has rallied and the stock market is up, so Wall Street seems fairly happy for now. Wall Street could care less about the real economy. Wall Street cares about asset prices. Wall Street doesn't really care about Main Street. Unless, of course, the mutual funds and the money market funds and the bond funds, people start taking their money out. Then Wall Street will care for a little bit. The sheep will have to be asleep so Wall Street can collect their fees. The sheep will have to be asleep here in the US so Wall Street can do deals with the Chinese government to get even more fees and siphon more retirement savings to China, which is what's been going on for a while. Although it looks like legislation now might be changing that, but we'll see. Not holding my breath on that one. Anne says, thank God you live in Texas, where the salon owner was arrested. Texas is not spared from this. Plus, you have more Democrats moving there. You have all the Democrats, not all, but a lot of Democrats, especially rich ones, that ruined California, and now they're moving to Texas. And I don't think they're all going to be in Austin. And there's a plane flying over now. I apologize. I had no idea that I was going to have a plane fly over. So I have other stories here if you want to read more about this, although this is very depressing. But unfortunately, I think governments are going for the power grab still. We have to continue our freedom of speech still and speak up about this. We have to educate more people that what's happening is wrong. It was good to see some protesters in Michigan, although they didn't have any mass or anything. So some of them probably got sick. I didn't see any news stories if some of them actually got sick. But, you know, protesting is good. People need to speak up. People need to protest. Big tech is turning hospitals into real-time surveillance centers. Apple and Google are bringing contact tracing to 3 billion people. This is an interesting story here from the end of April from former CIA agent Phil Giraldi. He is really good. I like his analysis here. I'll put a link to that article in the information and description section. It's monitoring the public after the coronavirus. How government's going after more power. Even more power and more control. You know, hopefully we don't get the cashless society, but it looks like that's what the Chinese government wants for their own citizens with a government cryptocurrency. Oh, I have this one other article here. So as reopening starts, Americans expect recovery to take years. Even those financially unaffected by the global pandemic and the shutdown don't foresee a rapid rapid rebound for the economy. A New York Times survey finds businesses are beginning to reopen and new cases are declining, but Americans don't expect life or the economy to return to normal anytime soon. Only 1 in 5 Americans expects overall business conditions to be very or somewhat good over the next year, according to a poll conducted this month for the New York Times by the online research platform SurveyMonkey. 60% said they expected the next 5 years to be characterized by periods of widespread unemployment or depression. Those numbers. So people thought, I think it was mostly central planners, President Trump's speaking about this, the Trump administration speaking about this, that they can shut down the economy quickly and then restart it fairly quickly. And maybe for some industries, they can get that to a certain extent, but we're seeing out of China that that's not happening. A lot of Chinese manufacturers, their order book is down, especially for exports to European Union and the US, their orders are down 70%. So I've been tracking these articles out, and there's anecdotal evidence that some factories and some major manufacturing hubs in China, there's 8 out of 10 workers unemployed. This is not every factory, but there are factories now that do not have demand. They do not have customers to export to. And I think that's going to be the case for a lot of American businesses, because you can't shut down a large economy like the US economy in a very short amount of time and then expect to restart it in a very short amount of time too. Especially when so many people lost their jobs and people are, trying to figure out how to pay their bills. Because people don't have savings. Well, a lot of people don't have savings. How many people do you think actually spent the time over the last 2.5, 3 months to actually go and learn some skills and build an online business and maybe, or a side hustle, and start making an extra $1,000 or $2,000 a month, maybe more online? What percentage of the population do you think actually took advantage of all the free time they have to go make more money online? Well, besides the bull market in OnlyFans.com, the cam models. But I should not talk about that anymore. But there is a bull market in webcam sex modeling. There's a lot of them. They're all it's all these college girls, even married girls now, even libertarian married girls on Twitter now promoting their OnlyFans.com webcam sex modeling accounts. Okay, back to the... Wasn't planning on talking about that, but that's the reality of the situation, that people are adapting to that to get more money, get more currency to pay their bills. 60% said they expected the next 5 years to be characterized by, quote, periods of widespread unemployment or depression. Those numbers are little changed from a month earlier and may even reflect a slight decline in outlook, signaling that the reopenings and federal and state political moves to deal with the pandemic have had little impact on confidence. Other data tells a similar story. A survey from the University of Michigan last week found that consumers' assessment of current economic conditions had improved modestly in early May, but that their view of the future had continued to darken. Consumers have good reason for that pessimism. Economists who once expected a swift V-shaped recovery been warning about that. The odds of a V-shaped recovery were low, considering the problems in the global supply chain, problems in the food chain, and how some businesses, some manufacturing businesses can't even source parts right now, and the consumer doesn't have cash flow to go and upgrade things like a new iPhone or a newer iPhone, or go and switch a new lease on a car. Those things are not available. I'm seeing enormous sales now that, Memorial Day is coming up. Memorial Day sales, there's enormous sales on a lot of consumer discretionary items. People are trying to get cash, trying to clear inventory, trying to get any sales possible. V-shaped recovery now say unemployment is likely to remain elevated for years. In testimony before a Senate committee on Tuesday, Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve Chair, Steve Mnuchin, Treasury Secretary, both warned that further job losses were likely, although they said it's not a depression, although they disagreed sharply about the best policies to foster growth. How about allowing more free market policies? How about allowing deflation? Less government intervention, more freedom. Allowing deflation so prices will fall because people do not have cash flow, because people do not have savings. Deflation is the cure, like Peter Schiff says. Anyone who's read Austrian School Economics knows that deflation is the cure to all this malinvestment, this misallocation of capital. But governments and Keynesian central planners hate deflation. Consumers' bleak outlook, however justified, could have serious implications for the economic recovery, especially because it's all based, 70% of the U.S. economy, the GDP, is based on consumer spending. If Americans fear that their jobs are in jeopardy or that business will remain slow, they may be less likely to spend, even if their personal finances are stable. Hence why these policies are going to be to try to force, whether that's what Mark Cuban said. Remember, he wants people to get checks, but they have to spend it in 10 days. Negative interest rate policy. That's a disincentive to save. They are trying to force people to spend. Even after 9/11, I think President George W. Bush was saying that people have to go out and go travel, people have to go out and spend, people have to go shopping. Because so much of the U.S. economy is based on consumer spending. But these consumers are consuming a lot of them without saving, without producing anything. My friend Doug Casey says that for the economy to function well, people have to produce. If you want to be a successful adult, an investor, or business owner, you have to produce more than you can, You have to produce more than you consume. You have to save the difference. And then I'm going to add this part here because Doug doesn't say this. Then you have to learn how to invest it. You have to learn how to invest your savings, or you have to find someone who's going to help you out with that or teach you. Return free risk, one of my favorite commenters, says the problem today is that people save too much. They're claiming that, but it's not true. But these are Keynesians. They're always wrong with their predictions. Keynesians have the bias, though. They want to force people to spend. It's the paradox of thrift. They do not want people saving. Super chat from Bob. Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. He says rent is too high. This happens when you have elevated property values, when you have massive currency debasement, massive currency inflation and credit inflation for decades. You're going to have artificially high real estate prices. And then you're going to have, I really don't know any real estate investors who do not use debt. So if you're a real estate investor and you use debt, your interest payments may go up, which means you're going to have to pass those costs, or your property taxes. First of all, your property taxes are definitely going up, regardless of what happens in this environment. The governments at all levels, whether that's the local level, municipal, or county level, they're going to try to increase your property taxes. It's stupid, but this is what governments do. When governments get in trouble, their solution, and I'm using air quotes here, is to raise taxes, is to either find new sources of taxes, which is why all governments all over the world are already discussing online sales tax as a national sales tax or value-added tax if they do not already have them, or increasing property taxes. So if property taxes go up, or you're holding a lot of real estate on debt, you're probably going to have to pass the costs along. That means higher rent. The majority of real estate investors, the successful ones I know, all use debt. What they put 20%, even if they're doing rental properties, they put 20% down. They get a mortgage on the rest, and their rental payments cover more than their property taxes and their mortgage payment, and they pocket the difference. Rob, that is really funny. Pun intended. I will not read that. Okay, got one more super chat here from Greg. He is a Patreon account. Well, that is really weird. You know, I think YouTube is messing with the stream here because it says I only have 4 viewers and 0 likes. That is really weird. It says the stream is running, but it says I have 4 concurrent. I should take a screenshot of this. I have 4 concurrent viewers and 0 likes. It's probably because I said the wrong words. Admiral Troll, I won't read your comments, but I will comment on your comments and say that that signals desperation. When you have a lot of very pretty girls willing to do webcam sex modeling for $3 per person or $5 per person per month, it's desperation. It happens in a lot of third world countries where prostitution goes through the roof. This is a very similar concept. In a lot of very poor countries, there's women who are married who also do prostitution with for foreign currency. So it's to a certain extent that's similar to what's happening now. I've seen married women I follow on Twitter like that are doing it now too. I don't know if they got their husband's permission. There's some really funny videos out going around Twitter of like boyfriends catching their girlfriends like who are finding out their webcam sex models. It's really bad. Okay, Lou says there's 250 people viewing and 95 likes, but my software is not working. I do not know why. Really weird. Got a super chat here from Greg. Thank you for the super chat. He is also a Patreon account contributor, one of over 1,000 Patreon account contributors. There is a lot of articles, technical analysis charts, and audio podcasts behind the paywall for only $5 a month. That is the cost of a pretty mediocre to crappy cup of coffee. You can take a look at my research behind the paywall. There are articles there on the uranium market, coal. I just put a new coal article out. A lot of gold and silver mining articles, a ton of research about the global macro situation, and also my specialty, the precious metal royalty and streaming company, because I was mentored by one of the most successful, by probably the best CEO and innovator in the industry who invented a lot of the contracts. I've been mentored by him for years now. Spent a lot of extra time teaching me the business step by step and phone calls and emails over the years that I did not, he did not have to spend that extra time on me. So that's a competitive advantage for me where I've learned a lot about the business without actually getting hired by him. That's Nolan Watson. So thanks to him, I've learned the industry very, very well. And why it's a pretty amazing industry. It adapts very well to changing market conditions. Okay, one country decides to start confiscating mines. Fine. They're going to do deals in other countries. Can a gold miner do that? Can a copper miner just say, oh, we're going to have to go do deals in other countries? If you only own 1 or 2 mines and the government changes the rules, if you're an individual mining company with only 1 or 2 mines, guess what? You're SOL. You are shit out of luck. If you're a royalty and streaming company with a lot of cash flow, it's not a big deal. Okay, it's temporarily hurt. You go and do deals in other countries. Capital goes where it is treated best. the best thing about this business model, a lot of diversified cash flows, high margins, and it can adapt to changing market conditions. So thank you very much to my Patreon account contributors. It's over 1,000 now. Thank you so much, making my life easier, so I can focus on content, research, information, analysis, and financial education. Thank you to my monthly PayPal contributors. There's still a few of you left, although most of you have switched over to PayPal because it's, switched over from PayPal to Patreon because it's a better value because there's a lot of content behind the paywall. And thank you to people who tip me once in a while. It's much appreciated. You can do so through my website, wallstreetformainstreet.com. You can tip me, one-time tip if you want there too. Okay, everyone. So more articles on this if you want to read about how dystopian things are getting with the gym owner, with the salon owner, with all the nasty things that big tech has planned. There will be more articles below this video in the information and description section. But welcome to Dystopia. We need to get the economy restarted. But it should not be politicians. It should not be bureaucrats deciding on the restart. It should be individual business owners adapting to changing market conditions and taking more responsibility to improve their financial situation. Because the more governments get involved, the worse things are going to get. We've seen that in the last 2.5, 3 months. And eventually, there's going to be even more inflation than there is now because of the additional over 20 trillion in currency and credit that has been created by all these governments in just the last 2.5, 3 months.